I started first with entrepreneurship. So before being an investor, I've been a founder. I've built multiple startups very young with a lot of mistakes and a lot of failures, which turned into a lot of learnings. You just have to do it. You go for it. It's like when you're on a date and you see in front of you this beautiful woman, this beautiful man, and you want to kiss that person, but you're not sure. You're so scared. And I said, at the end, you just have to do it. You go for it, and whatever happens, happens. So, it's the same with selling. Selling is scary. It's uncomfortable. You're out of your comfort zone, but you just have to do it. And with time, you get better and better and less uncomfortable.
Hello, I'm Somi Arian. I'm a tech philosopher and the founder of Impeak. Today, I'm joined by Gabriel Jarrosson, a French VC who only invests in startups coming out of the Y Combinator. Gabriel began his entrepreneurial journey by creating his first website at 13 and selling his first startup at 25. He's also known for his popular YouTube channel, Leonis Investissement, a leading source of investment insights in France. We'll dive into his journey, exploring strategies and insights that I'm sure will be interesting to both investors and founders. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. So, Gabriel, it was really nice meeting you during Web Summit. I'm so glad that we crossed paths, and I really liked what you're doing with your fund, investing specifically into startups that are coming out of YC. So why don't you tell me a little bit of your story? How did you become a fund manager and VC? What's your story back? I know a little bit of it, but tell it for everybody else.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you. My story starts, 15 years ago, maybe. So I'm Gabriel. Nice to meet you, everyone. I'm French originally and based in France still. Even though I only invest in the US. So I'm an engineer originally, and very quickly I started first with entrepreneurship. So before being an investor, I've been a founder. I've built multiple startups very young with a lot of mistakes and a lot of failures, which turned into a lot of learnings. I probably made all of the mistakes possible, which allowed me to, really get a feeling of why they're mistakes, because you make them, your startup fails, it stays with you for a very long time. As a founder, I had some very moderate success, but 3 exits, small, but still allowed me to have a little bit of cash and a little bit of credibility. And so then I started angel investing in 2013. So that's 10 years ago already now, and originally on my own, just my own money. And it went quite well. I was, investing, doing well, had some exits. And so a lot of people kind of were asking me, oh, you've had a few exits. How can we potentially invest with you? So then after investing on my own, the second part was starting an angel group, an angel club with mostly French investors. That led me to invest in Silicon Valley and the Y Combinator. And then because that was doing quite well, really well, then I started my own fund, Lobster Capital. This kind of a 10, 15, maybe 12, 13-year journey overall that brought me here in a few sentences.
Very cool. So when you started Lobster Capital, by the way, why is it that so many venture capitals have got fish names? Is there something behind that?
I wanted an animal, so you should probably build Cats Capital, right?
Yeah, I probably will.
But I wanted an animal. I thought it was cool. My club before in France, the film was called Leonis, and the logo was a lion. Lion is like a, I don't know, fancy king of the jungle, whatever. And then lobster, I think, is kind of, less serious, in sort of. And there's a lot of explanations behind it. There's a lot of things why lobster, which I won't get into, but it was not necessarily a fish. It would need for me to be an animal. Originally, I had another animal, which I won't name because it's already taken. So I had to change, but I'm actually super happy that I landed on lobster. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And I've noticed that in the whole investment and capital kind of world, there's a lot of fish names. So for example, in crypto, people who hold, a certain amount of crypto,
whales,
and then there's like, I don't know, sharks and all sorts of different kinds of crabs.
There's bulls and bears, and there's a lot of, it's true.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So Lobster Capital, I know that now you only invest in startups that are coming out of Y Combinator. When did you start that, and why did you decide to do that?
Originally, my story started in France and investing in French startups. And I had the group, we were investing a few €100,000 per year. And it happened to me like a revelation, like an epiphany. One morning, I woke up and I was investing in tech startups in France. And I said to myself, wait a minute, I speak English, obviously. Tech startups, the biggest ones and the best ones in the world, they're not in France. They're in Silicon Valley. And, I can just, take a plane and go to Silicon Valley and speak English to people. So that's what I did. I took my plane, I took my backpack, I arrived in San Francisco. Bonjour, everybody. This is me, Gabriel. And so I was like, okay, let me try to kind of replicate what I did and do it there. And so I came in California with a really kind of a set of fresh eyes from the outside. I didn't know much about the space. That's, around 2018, 2019. And very quickly, I tried to look for the best investment opportunities, for the best deals. And I looked everywhere. I saw a lot of different things. And of course, I saw Y Combinator. And, I'm an engineer, so I'm very kind of analytical. I was comparing, okay, what is the best source for me of deal flow, etc. And quite quickly, I realized, well, the best deals of Y Combinator are probably the best in the world. And it is most likely one of the best places for me to invest. Then came the question of access, which, it's very difficult to get access to those deals, but I very quickly saw, okay, those deals are amongst probably, among the best or the best of Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is already in itself the best in the world. So this is where I should invest. So it was really kind of discovering and trying to have an, analytical view, and it led me directly to YC.
And how exactly did you manage to, was it like networking? How did you manage to get access?
That's a question I get asked a lot. And, the answer is a lot of work, a lot of network, and a little bit of luck. It is extremely, extremely hard to access YC. I was fortunate to, meet the right people, be at the right place at the right time, invest in the right company or companies, which opened the doors for me of YC. It is almost impossible to get access to that network unless you go through YC yourself, which I think we might talk about as well later. But yeah, it was a little bit of everything. I spent a lot of time, met a lot of people, worked a lot, proved myself over and over and over again, and then a little bit of luck on top of that, and voila.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very good. So why did you not want to support your compatriots, right? Like a French startups, because that seems like it was also a great opportunity in front of you. And I mean, not everybody has to go through YC, right? So I just love to know what was the thinking. Did you think that they were not as good, or opportunities were not as good? Yeah, tell me.
Yeah, that's also a question people ask me sometimes. Like, oh my God, you're a traitor to your country. You're not even supporting the French ecosystem, and also the French ecosystem is growing quite well at the moment. Listen, it's of course I love France. I'm proud of being French. Like I said, I still live in France today, even though I'm in San Francisco, of course, very often. But I'm still officially based in France. But when people trust you with their money, it's really hard to say to people, trust me with your money with, $1,000, $10,000, $100,000 or euros, and I'm going to grow that money for you. People work very hard to make their money, and they're very scared. And so my responsibility as a fund manager or as an investor is to make the most money for my investors. That's why they trust me. They have to believe that I will make my best effort to, make money for them. And so again, with my engineer brain, I very quickly realized that Silicon Valley is a bigger, more potential, bigger game for a lot of reasons that I can briefly touch on. But basically, there's more exits. Their companies are bigger. They raise more. There's a much bigger stock market, which in Europe is almost non-existent. So there's and bigger companies to acquire the startups as well. There's a lot of reasons why Silicon Valley is a much better place, and you will make more money in Silicon Valley than in Europe. And so because I could, then it was kind of my responsibility to invest only there. Because every time I see a lot of deal flow in France, and some companies are amazing, I'm always thinking to myself, this is not going to be a $10 billion company, because we have very, very few $10 billion companies in Europe. And even the ones that reach, the unicorns per se, have very few exits as well. How do you get the money back? So it was kind of obvious for me. And again, I want my investors to make the most money possible. If they do, they'll be happy with me. I'm very young and very ambitious. Well, I'm not so young anymore, but very ambitious still. And so, I want to make a great returns for my investors. So that's why.
So it was a simple statistical decision.
Yes. I can also tell you that it's also more original. If you're a French investing in France, you're like doing like everyone else. For me, so right now my fund is international. I have investors all over the world, including in the US. But for my European investors, I'm also sort of selling the American dream, if you want, right? Like, through Lobster Capital, we have access to the US, but not only to the US, we have access to Silicon Valley and the Y Combinator. So that's also part of the branding, if you want. But again, it's not just branding for branding. It's branding that I really believe in. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Tell me a little bit about the process of, fundraising for your fund. How big is your fund? Tell me a little bit about what number fund are you on and all that stuff.
So this is fund number 1, and it's 10 million, which is in the world of funds considered nano, macro, like super small. It's still, a lot of money to raise, obviously, and not easy, which I'm going to talk about in a second. But yeah, it's a 10 million fund number 1. I'm planning on raising a fund number 2, which I hope would be 50. So a little, bigger, still small fund. In the world of funds, there's funds of tens of billions, etc. So, one step at a time. You go 10, 50, then maybe 150 or whatever, and you grow. So I'm on fund 1 and it's 10. Yes. Mm-hmm. And to answer your previous question, yes, raising a fund specifically for Y Combinator is much easier for a number of reasons. Number 1, YC is a very famous brand. Almost everyone knows YC. And if you don't know YC, you just look at the numbers. 5% of YC companies become unicorns. 5%. That's 1 out of 20. If you randomly take 20 companies of YC, you should have 1 unicorn in there, which makes the whole return. So that's, super, super impressive. Another reason is when you're an LP, you trust your money with someone, you give your money to a fund manager. Basically, you really don't know what they're going to invest into. Like, there is no way of knowing. Of course, they tell you kind of the thesis, but if it's like B2B SaaS, it could be any company in the world or maybe in a geographic. With Lobster, you know that for sure all of the investments will be YC companies. It's very reassuring for investors as well. So yeah, it is much easier to raise that way.
Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about, did you ever go through YC yourself?
I did not.
What do you know from the viewpoint of, if founders are listening to this, should they try to get into YC, or what does it take for them to do that? My
belief, it's personal, of course, but my belief is in almost every case and every situation, yes, you should try to go into YC. Trying is not succeeding because they accept less than 1% of applicants. So it is very, very, very difficult to get in. But if and when you do, my opinion is that it's life-changing for your business, and it's actually life-changing for you as a person as well. The main reason is you're going to have, for a matter of a few months, you're going to have the eyes of, thousands of investors from the whole world pointed on you. It's going to be super easy for you to raise money at a higher valuation. And then you're going to have that brand follow you around for years and years and years after that, which is going to make everything for you easier. Reaching out to other founders, hiring is going to be easier because, look, we're a YC company. Of course, everybody wants to come work for you, etc. So in almost every case, I would say it is worth it to go into YC. I have so many founders telling me, oh, it's too late. We already have X revenue, or we already raised, or whatever. Even for people having revenue, even for people having raised, in many cases, I do think, again, personally, that it's worth it going through YC. I know a lot of people disagree with that, and that's okay. But that's my opinion. Yeah.
So tell me, what does it take? So what is the hallmark of a type of company that gets accepted into a YC?
So, that's a great question, of course, especially for the founders listening to us. I don't have all the answers, of course, because I'm not part of the decision. I can tell you what I see because I see so many of them. So, okay. First of all, it's very rarely solo founders. It's usually a team. And then it's usually a tech project. And so you need to have a CTO. You need to have someone in the team, a developer. If you have only developer, like 3 people, the 3 of them developers, that's fine. But if you have 0, that's a problem. So that's something that, you have maybe in a batch of 200, you have maybe 2 solo founders. The rest are teams with a CTO. So that's, number 1. Number 2, it changed over the years, but right now, in 2023, 2024, you need to be in the US, and most likely you need to be in San Francisco. In your application, I think they ask you, where are you planning to be in the near future? If you're saying, I want to stay at home, I want to stay in Paris, I want to stay wherever in London, again, your chances are getting slimmer. If you say, I'm moving to San Francisco, coming to the mecca of startups, you have much higher chances. The batches were remote during COVID, then they were remote friendly. Now they're still remote friendly, but only on paper. Actually, you kind of need to be there. So that's another thing. Then, a lot of people believe that you need to have revenue to get in. That's not true. I think it's like 60 or 70% of startups get accepted without revenue, like super early, with just a team and an idea. So that's enough. Then it's who's your team? What's their experience? Are they credible in building this? The idea you're going after, and the way you present it, the way you think. It's not only about your idea, it's also about the way you think around your idea. Because a lot of YC companies pivot during the YC batch, but it's really about your mindset and how you're going after it, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, let's say, somebody hasn't been able to get into YC for many reasons. They are, maybe they don't fit the bill. But what are some of the things that we can learn from the type of startups that go through YC that we can apply to companies that are not necessarily Y Combinator?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think every startup could potentially benefit from copying or getting inspired at least. So before that, one thing I want to say is, if you don't get in, you should reapply the next time. That's one thing that YC really encourage you to do. It's people sometimes they feel like ashamed or something, like, oh, I was rejected, I don't want to face rejection again. I know many companies who get in, they apply 3, 4, 5, 6 times, and at the end they finally get in. So that's something that I would suggest you can do. Then what can you do like YC? There's a few things. Something that I really like with YC companies is they don't really care for the superfluous, for the things that are not important. So, at YC, they tell you, make something people want. And so you should only do 2 things: code, create your product, and then talk to customers and sell it to them. And, especially in Europe, it depends where the listeners are, but in Europe, in France, of course, but everywhere, people are like, oh, let me create a design, and let me, write a patent and a logo, and like change my website. And I see people spending weeks and months on the logo, on the website, on the blah, 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 on the business plan, which again, doesn't really matter. Where, YC companies, they just go for it. It's like, you build it, you sell it, the end. And then you repeat, right? Build it, sell it, repeat. So something I like they're really kind of laser focused on that goal. And it is because the batch is very short. It's 3 months, and you have a very short amount of time to get traction and get revenue. And so you should probably create some like sprints for yourself, virtual sprints of like, okay, I have these 3 months and I'm just going to sell, and that's it. Because the rest, if you have a great logo, a great business plan, whatever, but you don't sell, your company is not gonna survive. On the other hand, if you have customers but you have no logo, no business plan, your business is going to survive and is actually going to thrive. So that's one thing that I really love. Something that I like as well, but I'm not sure if you can reproduce it, is YC companies don't spend too much time fundraising. This is because they're famous and everybody wants to invest in them. Maybe you cannot really do that on your own outside, but I see so many people fundraising for 6 months, and it's such a huge distraction. Potentially, you should fundraise for 2 weeks, 1 month, and then whatever you've raised, you keep it and you go with it. But at least you go back to building, because usually it's like half time or sometimes full time for one of the founders for 6 months. So during that time period, he or she is not working on his business, right? So that's a big problem. What else can we talk about YC? Very committed, very focused, narrow focused. They usually leave together, the founders, for 3 months. They have usually they become roommates, and so they live and breathe YC from morning to evening, even at night. They just do this. So I would really suggest that this is unhealthy over the long term. I believe very much in work-life balance and having a life outside of work and setting time aside for your family, etc. But for those first 3 months, everyone tells me it changes completely the dynamic because you're all in, you're doing it all the time. So this is something you could try as well. Those are the first things that come to mind. Maybe I will have some other ideas, but I'll stop.
Yeah, this is a good. This is really interesting stuff. Really good ideas. So basically, they're in a just do it mode, right? I want to talk a little bit about that fundraising thing. One thing I found as a founder myself was that the amount of time that it takes and energy that it takes to raise money, if you apply the same amount of time and energy to generating revenue,
yes,
you will be in a better position.
Thank you.
That's why we initially started out as a Web3 platform. We were building a Web3 LinkedIn. That didn't work out because Web3 didn't really proliferate the way that it would do. So I had to pivot. And then as I had to pivot, I needed to raise some money. And I wanted to raise, a bridge round. I still had a couple $100,000 in the bank, and I wanted to raise a bridge round because I was like, okay, I need money for this pivot. What I found was that it was very difficult to raise money for a Web3 platform in 2023, as opposed to when I first raised in 2021.
Oh, yeah.
So what I did, I was like, I tried for 3 months, raised small amounts from a few people whom I knew, but it wasn't enough really to justify spending the time. So I decided to completely pivot away from Web3, keep the money that I had, and really focus on revenue. And that really changed everything for me. I feel so much more productive. I'm now bringing in revenue. I'm bringing in, I've rebuilt the entire business model. There will be a rebrand, all that stuff. But it's like, I just decided to become really frugal, and just work with what I had. I put some of the development on hold because I was like, okay, we've already built something. The platform is working. It's working for the purpose of what we need in order to make money, to bring in revenue. It's enough. There is what is there. There is enough, because you can get into this spiral of, I'm going to raise money, build, rather than focusing on actually generating revenue. So I stopped the development. I was like, the last bit of development is finished now. And starting from January, there will be no more development on our platform for the foreseeable future, because everything we need is there for now until, we focus on revenue. And I started going out, instead of talking to people about, investing, I started talking to them about, here's how you can use our platform for your business, and here's how you can benefit from it. So that really was a game changer for me. And I decided not to raise money and just focus on revenue. So talk to me a little bit about what's your observation.
I love that so much. Thank you for sharing this, because of course, I'm an investor, and so all the time I speak to startups raising money, and we keep talking about fundraising. And startups, they announce, oh, we raised X, we raised 1 million, 10 million, 100 million. It's so amazing. And something I keep telling everybody is, customers' money is better than investors' money. It's exactly what you talked about, and what you said is so important. If you spend the same amount of energy, people spend, months to fundraise, and they completely ignore their business. And if you do put that energy to your business, you're going to have money, and you don't need to fundraise. And in the end, it's so much better because you have 100% of your equity. So of course, as an investor, I'm super happy that some startups are choosing to raise money. It allows me to invest in them and to share into their success into the future. But many times I say to people, you should not be raising money right now. You can, of course, if you're at YC, people will beg you to take their money. So in that case, of course, it's super easy. You raise money, you get a couple $1 million in the bank in 1 week. In a week, you get $1 million. Of course, you're going to get it, right? And you're going to take it. It's super easy. But for most founders who are not at YC, you shouldn't raise. my experience personally, I built 7 startups and sold 3, never raised. So when I sold my businesses, I always had 100% of the equity, which, allowed me to have some nice exits as well. So, this is amazing that you speak about this, because we keep talking about fundraising, including us at the beginning of the podcast, investing, blah, blah, blah. But so many times you shouldn't fundraise because it's going to be super difficult. 2023 was extremely hard to fundraise for people, and you should just put your energy to, grow the business. And I always say to people, you should fundraise when you don't need it, because when you need it, it's going to take a lot of time and energy, and most of the times it's not going to happen for you. But if you don't need it, so the company is growing, etc., then it's super easy to fundraise when you actually don't need it. So, thank you for talking about this topic. It's awesome.
I agree with you. I think you're right. Fundraising when you don't need it. I really like that idea. It's interesting because now there are times when I'm talking to potential clients that say, "Are you also raising?" And I'm like, "Actually, not." But I'm like, but when the terms are right, in the right kind of environment, I might take some money that I think will help propel everything a lot faster and move helps us move faster. But primarily, just focusing on revenue right now, because I think we have everything we need. And I think a lot of times it's about actually stopping and taking a look at what you have right now, and thinking, how can I generate revenue with what I have. One of the other things I see quite a lot is that founders come to us and they say, we've built a product, and we have spent this much time on creating. We now need to raise money to hire a sales team to sell. Yes. And
it drives me crazy.
Yes. So talk to me about that. So I look, to me, it just doesn't make any sense. I'm like, you're the founder, get out and sell.
Yeah.
Right. You say,
you've said it all. Like, there's nothing to add. It's so terrible when I hear this. I'm like, you have no idea. Like, you're not an entrepreneur. Again, it's not their fault in the sense that everybody all the time talks about fundraising. So they actually believe that this is the way to build, is you create and then you raise, and only once you have raised, you can spend on marketing or on hiring a salesperson to sell it. And of course, it's super, the furthest away from the truth. And of course, no one at YC is doing it like that. They're selling themselves, like you just said. So it's not entirely their fault. I think it's good that we're kind of, establishing the truth here, that you don't need money to sell. You just need to sell on your own, and money will come later. But that's what they've been told. That's the example that they see. And so then the problem is, after a few months, they're not able to raise. And so they just, drop their project and go back to a job. Where, again, if they put the same energy instead of raising to sell, they would have a business.
So why do you think some founders are finding it hard to sell? I just think that you can't be a founder if you can't sell. Selling is such an important,
that's true,
fundamental aspect.
But it's scary. Selling is scary. So last night I was doing a webinar in front of 150 fund managers who are starting to fundraise. And everyone was asking me, how do you ask for money? You talk to investors, and then how do you ask for money? People are like, it's scary, it's uncomfortable, money is not always an easy topic. How do you do it? And I told them, you practice and you go, but you're very casual about it. You're very polite, etc. But I told them, in the end, you just have to do it. You go for it. And I took the metaphor, which is fun. I say, it's like when you're on a date and you see in front of you this beautiful woman, this beautiful man, and you want to kiss that person, but you're not sure. You're so scared. And I said, at the end, you just have to do it. You go for it, and whatever happens, happens. So it's the same with selling. Selling is scary. It's uncomfortable. You're out of your comfort zone, but you just have to do it. And with time, you get better and better and less uncomfortable. And I think I agree with you. If you're not able to, in the end, business is always selling something to someone. If you're not able to sell, you're not going to have a business. So you can either have a co-founder that can sell, or it is going to have to be you. And but the good news is you can train. You can be super bad at selling and just train with a lot of, it's not that hard, actually. Again, why Combinator says, make something people want. So if you create a very good product and then you train a little bit with selling it, you can easily succeed.
I agree. I think one other thing I would say is this is something that people who go through Y Combinator probably already have, and because of the brand that's behind them. But you need to build a brand, and that you need to, and that brand sometimes has to be yourself. And in my case, you know, I've been lucky that I've been building my brand for the past 10 years, and that really helps, right? So I guess part of that is you want to put yourself in a position where it becomes a little bit easier at first as you start to build your brand. And then it gets easier and easier. The bigger your brand becomes, the more reputable you become, you know, then it becomes easier.
You know, I will make a very small tangent, but I completely agree again with, we have the same opinions on everything. It's the best podcast that I've ever done because we agree on everything. It's perfect. But, you know, we live in the social media age. Everyone can create their YouTube, their Instagram, their TikTok, their whatever. And it's basically like owning your own TV show, your own TV channel. And it allows you to create your own brand. Or you can your own website, your own blog. And you just put content out there and it creates your brand. People know you, they follow you, etc. And, you know, this is a superpower. I advised most of my companies that I invest in to have some sort of social media presence. Even the founder could have a YouTube channel of like, this is my journey as a founder. This is what I'm building, blah, blah, blah. You know, I did this, by the way. I have a I have a medium YouTube channel in France, and it helped me tremendously because it's, you know, it's like you said, power of branding.
Yeah, 100%.
I always take the example of Donald Trump. Of course, in France, everybody hates him here, and in California as well, where everybody hates him. But, you know, he wouldn't be, whatever you think of him, he succeeded pretty well. He's president of the US, right? He was. Maybe again in 2024, we'll see. And this is a lot because of his TV show. He was for 10 or 12 years on TV every day. At the time, he didn't have YouTube, but without his TV show, he couldn't have been president of the United States. So today, you don't need to be on TV. You can just create your YouTube channel, or your TikTok, or your Instagram, etc. So
yeah, that helps a lot when it comes to selling. So let's talk a little bit about the mental pressures of building in today's macro environment. You know, I've been super interested more and more. I've been thinking a lot about founders' mental health.
Yeah.
You know, I've dealt with my own fair share of mental health, you know, challenges. I have ADHD, a bit of autism, a bit on the spectrum of, you know, a mishmash of different things. And for me, it has always been actually a blessing in disguise. I've used it to my benefit. Yes, there's been difficult times, but over time I've learned to manage it, and I've made it work for me. What are some of the specific things that you see in today's macro environment, especially well, there's a combination of the macro environment, and then there's also the constant shift of technology. So like, for example, you build a product, you wake up in the morning and ChatGPT has been released, and you know, and you lose everything that you built, right? So over the past few years of you working as an investor, what are some of the examples you have seen? Maybe do you have a story to tell of maybe a startup that built something and then it was completely displaced by a new technology? I bet there were so many of them that happened with ChatGPT.
There are, luckily, none of my investments, because that's something that I look at previously to investing. I'm very peculiar about this, but you know, I love this topic. It's a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. I've also had my fair share of a mental health issue, I should say. I think I'm actually persuaded and sure that, you know, being a founder, even more than an investor kind of has a better position because you invest in a lot of companies. Some of them are not doing well. You have others doing well. And, you know, usually you're raising a fund. So it's not even your own money, even though, you know, most people, including myself, are investing in their own fund. I'm also invested heavily into my own fund. But I think investors probably have it a little easier. But I've been a founder before. And, you know, I've struggled a lot with my mental health, because when your business is doing well, you're doing well. When your business is not doing well, you're not doing well. And being a very young entrepreneur, my business was my identity. And I see a lot of people defining themselves as entrepreneurs, and that's it. And so my business, my work was my whole personality, my whole self. And when the business went to zero, I felt like a complete failure. I thought my life was ruined, and it was horrible, really horrible for me. And it was really difficult to move on and to move past that. So uh, that's why I love talking about this. I love being open about that, because people know that they're not alone struggling. It is really hard. I truly believe that entrepreneurship is not made for everybody, and I think people who can succeed, I think the only thing, the only difference between people who can and who cannot succeed is not about diploma. It's not about skills. It's about mental health, because it's going to get so difficult for you, and it will get difficult for everybody. Are you going to able to move past that? And I'm not saying without suffering, without pain. Everybody suffers, including me. But at some point, I was able to move past it and to keep building stuff and starting new businesses and etc. And I ended up in a place that I like. I don't want to say succeeding, because what is success? But I can say I ended up in a place that I like and that I'm happy for myself. But it took years, and it was so hard, and I saw a lot of people give up along the way. Also, in raising a first fund, I know a lot of first-time fund managers, and raising a fund, you get a lot of rejection. People who don't want to invest in your fund. Of course, not everyone you talk to is going to say, yes, I'll give you $1 million. And it gets as well, tiring of getting rejected and rejected and rejected. So again, I saw a lot of people kind of abandoning along the way, or just stopping their fund because they're not able to keep their hope and their mental state high up. So, I love that topic. I think we should talk about it so much more into today's society. We only celebrate winners. We never talk about failures. When people fail, we're like, oh my God, they're so lame. They failed. Failure is great. It's learning. I failed so many times before I got where I was. And entrepreneurship is extremely hard, and we don't talk about it. So people, they rush to start their business because it's the latest trend. It's the new thing. I'm going to be able to, talk about it to anyone, like, oh, look at me, I'm so cool, I'm an entrepreneur, blah, blah, blah. Yes, maybe, but you're also going to struggle a lot. And again, you're not alone. It's normal. And I wish I had a solution. I wish I could say, this is what you do. In that case, like, this is a solution. There's no real solution. It's just you and yourself, and hopefully you get some help, whether professional or just your family and close ones. But yeah, at least we talked about it.
Yeah, I watched a little clip from Sam Altman, which basically, paraphrasing here, but basically he was saying, suck it up and just just get on with it.
Yeah.
That
it's true. That's kind of the solution. Like, there's no real other thing that you can do, or you give up. But if you give up, you're not an entrepreneur anymore. And that's, there's no shame in not being able to withstand that, and being not be willing to endure this, because it's hard. So there's no shame in giving up, honestly.
Tell me a little bit about let's talk a bit more about this idea of people building things that could become commoditized. You said that when you are investing, you look out for that, you think about that. How do you possibly know? How will you possibly know what would be the next thing that comes up?
So yes, because the way you said it is, you invest in a company and one morning ChatGPT comes out. Of course, this you cannot predict. And that's why you're asking me. You cannot predict like some big major changes that are going to come. AI is one of them. Crypto probably is one of them. A lot of others, like right now we see a lot of changes in space tech, in med tech, of course, with RNA. Messaging, and there's also robotics, I think, that are going quite well. Tesla released their version 2 of their robot, which is, I don't remember the name, but the new robot is insane. Can do so many stuff. There's a video where the robot is picking up an egg and with not crushing it, which was for a long time considered as kind of something impossible to do in robotics, and that's it. 2023.
So having dexterity, basically.
Yeah, and sensitivity of pressure, which is extremely hard, because you don't have you can drop the egg, so you have to apply pressure, but you apply a little bit too much and you crush it. Obviously, it's super hard. Anyway, so those big major changes, you don't necessarily see them coming. Every time GPT launches a new version, tens of thousands of startups die on that day, because everyone was like, oh, we're a chatbot with AI for doctors, or a chatbot with AI for lawyers, blah, blah, blah. And, next week, GPT starts, now on ChatGPT 4, you can create your own bot. And that's it. That startup is dead. All of them are dead. So some major changes, you cannot see them coming, but a lot of things you can. And, including maybe ChatGPT in itself, you couldn't really know when and where and exactly how, but AI has been improving for years and years and years. And so that's also part of my work, and something I do a lot of is looking at the big trends of AI, but also the submarine trends. Like, what is going to be the ChatGPT of 2024, 2025? What are the trends that less people talk about, but still are worth investigating and getting interested in? So my job is being super curious, super open, and reading a lot of stuff, which, I love. It's just so cool to just read a bunch of books for my work, right? I think that's part of my job. So, and then when I invest, I'm looking at something that personally I call the unfair advantage. And so the unfair advantage is, what does that startup have that is really difficult to replicate for someone else, for anyone else? So, if you are an ex-banker building a fintech and you have all the knowledge of how this actually works, it's going to be super difficult for someone else to come in and compete with you, because that other person doesn't necessarily have the same knowledge as you. It's just one example. So I'm looking at that criteria. For me, it's very big when I invest. What's their unfair advantage? I don't want them to be copied and disrupted and destroyed the next week. And so that's why, like you said, when GPT came out, none of my companies went to zero. I haven't really invested in AI. Not that I'm not interested in AI. I think, like everyone else, that it's super interesting and probably a huge revolution in the coming future. But remember the dot-com bubble. The first companies, the first few months, everybody rushed into it like idiots, sort of.
Like crypto in 2021.
Exactly, like crypto. And then everything went to zero. All the projects, all the companies. And it's only after the first bubble that the big companies came, the Googles, the Amazons, the blah, 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 the eBays of the world. You got to kind of wait for the first wave where everybody jumps on it. And, there's this thing like when your mom or your grandma is asking you about crypto and then asking you about AI, like this is a symbol that it's a bubble. So, in 2021, my mom was like, oh, I should buy some Bitcoin. I was like, no, mom, it crashed, right? That's why I'm not saying I won't invest in AI. Of course I will. I just think it's a little bit too early. We're waiting for some more players to get established. We don't even really know what Google's response is going to be. There's Bard, but now there's Gemini, and then blah, blah, blah. So, I'm pacing myself. Let's see. I'm in this game for the next 30 years anyway, right? So I have time.
Yeah, and like you said, you're very young. so tell me a little bit about your vision for where things are going, like in terms of what you think is the next big trend. I know that space is a big one, the climate is a big one, I suppose quantum computing, but where do you see the next big trend being in, let's say, in the next 1 to 2 years?
So I think AI is only going to get bigger, but more established, like we talked about. Like the bad projects are going to be weeded out probably. Right now, personally, I'm really interested looking into space because SpaceX divided by 30, I think, the cost of going to orbit. But with their next rocket, the one that the big fat rocket or something, the one that they tried, it exploded, but it passed the point of maximum pressure, basically. So we know with a few tweaks and like it's going to work. And so with this new rocket, even bigger, they're again going to divide it by 10. So it's 10 times 30 times. That's 300 times cheaper. So there's a lot of stuff that that's going to happen in space. You see so many interesting things. We can talk about Arian Labs that's doing 3D imaging from space with a new technology. We can talk about this other, sadly, the name is not coming back to me, but they're basically manufacturing molecules in space that are not possible to manufacture on Earth and then dropping back the molecules on Earth with a parachute. Like, it's insane what's going to happen in space in the coming years. Something else I think is all the medical stuff, like COVID. We had the vaccine with RNA, and it opened a lot of new things. Right now, we don't really talk about it anymore. I guess people are fed up with vaccine and medicine and stuff. But a lot of people think that potentially this RNA technology could unlock maybe a treatment against cancer, in the next 10 years, which obviously it would be a revolution. And cancer is a big word that doesn't mean much because there's so many different types of cancers. Of course, it's not one solution to fix everything, but of course it is a big problem on Earth today. So those things I think are going to be huge. They're not typically what I invest into, by the way, but
I
I'm
was going to
looking at
ask,
them.
what's your focus? Do you have like a specific focus in your fund, or are you agnostic?
I'm agnostic in the software space. If it's digital, if it's not physical product, I'm agnostic. So, space tech is, of course, very physical, and usually med tech as well. If it's software for the biospace, med space, I will do it. I actually have a few investments in that space, but it needs to be, bits and data, and not physical objects and pieces.
I noticed that a lot of investors shy away from anything that requires physical production. Why is that? I'm finding it hard. Like, for example, even wearables. We have some startups in the wearable space, and they find it harder to get investment.
It's just easier for us. The main reason for me is hardware is really difficult, and you got production cost, and there's a lot of things that can go wrong. And when you're out of cash, but you're a hardware product, if you cannot manufacture your product anymore because you're out of cash, your company dies for sure. If you're a software company, you're out of cash, it's just your app or your server. It costs you, $100 per year. And you can keep trying to get customers and get money in, but you don't need to put money to manufacture what you're going to sell them because you're only selling. So for that reason, it's easier. It's also more scalable. If you're Apple, every time there's costs of materials, of shipping, of paying the employee making the iPhone, even though it's in China and it's cheap, but you still got to pay them. When you're Airbnb, every time you're selling a home, you don't build the home. So you can sell 10 times more homes, make 10 times more money. Your cost doesn't increase. If you're Apple and sell 10 times more iPhones, you got to create 10 times more iPhone. So for that reason, it's just easier. Now there's more and more people wanting to go back to the hardware, and they say, we should back the difficult things because it's brave, I guess. And I like that approach as well. I think we do need some people doing that. And I'm thinking of how I could potentially maybe do that in the future in one shape or another. But again, right now, like you said, I'm young. Well, I'm not 25, but I have huge ambitions, like I've mentioned. So I want to make a name for myself. And so this is going probably the path of least resistance for me. But I'm also thinking of, backing some very ambitious and harder projects in the future. Right now, I just want to, go with what I know.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing all this. Where can people follow you, and what do you want them to take away from it? Any final last words?
Follow me. The best is probably LinkedIn. You can find me with my name. I'm on Twitter, but I'm not super active. I'm on YouTube, very active, but it's in French. So if there's any French speakers, you can find me on YouTube as well. And second question, what do I want people to take away from this? Well, I would say for me, kind of what I would take away from this is don't go into either investing or building a business just because it's a trend, just because, you can boast about it to your friends, and because you just want to be an entrepreneur because it's, cool to hit on men, on girls or guys or whatever. Do it if you have a passion. Do it if you have the burning fire in your chest that you really want to do it. You want to have an impact. Don't do it for the money, by the way. We don't talk about this, but if you just want to do it for the money, it's not going to work. Do it to make the world better, or to have an impact, or to do something to help people. And because it's going to be very hard. So if you don't have the mission, if you don't have it deep inside you, it's going to be super hard for you. Don't do it for the fame, for the trends, for the money. In that case, go do something else.
Yeah, do it for the right reasons. Thank you so much, Gabriel, for being here. This was a great conversation. And
thank you for having
everything.
me. Thank you for having me. It was awesome. I loved it.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Gabriel Jarrosson. Be sure to follow him on LinkedIn to stay up to date with his content and insights. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel on YouTube or wherever you get your audio podcasts so that you don't miss the future episodes. It will mean the world to me if you leave a review and share the podcast with others that you think might find it interesting.